Okay. Well, thank you to Christian, thank you to Joe, and thanks to all of you for showing up. The topic today is Sport for Life, driving retention through innovation and technology. And I thought that for today's presentation, what I would do is I would use a little bit of the following outline. We'll give you just a little bit of my personal perspective because I'll have a unique angle on sport technologies and how we can possibly implement those to try to have significant gains. We'll do a quick little youth sport review just to highlight a couple topics that I think reveal and reflect on where youth sport is today. Talk a bit about innovation and kind of rethinking access to sport and how that might drive intake into youth sport. We'll then shift gears, talk about staying in the game or technology and science that might help drive retention in sport. A little bit of a comment on the future, and we can't go over a topic like this without saying something about AI and digital twins. A little bit of a cautionary note and a summary, and then we'll see if we have time for some questions at the end. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and move this and just make sure that I've got my mouse working. Yeah, so let me just give you my perspective very quickly. I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of years at the Olympic Training Center in the US, and that was kind of in between my master's degree and my PhD, and I was really interested in exercise physiology. So a physiologist by training. I then came over to Australia. That was back in '94 and worked with the Australian Institute of Sport for 21 years. So I have two boys that were born and raised in Australia. They're visiting the US. They still make fun of it a lot, and they've still retained a bit of their accent. During that time, from Atlanta in '96 all the way up to the Olympics in London, it was really hard to not be influenced by new and novel technologies. And usually the technologies would do one of two things. They would allow us to be more efficient. There was a job we were already doing, and all the technology did was it allowed us to do that same job more efficiently. And then there were times where the technology provided us with new insights. And I think the same will hold true for youth sport. As was mentioned, I was able to go back to the US for 4 years working with the Sixers. We built a new facility and embedded a lot of technology within that facility, some of it's still being used today. And then for the last 4 years, I've worked in a concierge health and wellness startup company looking at performance health sciences. And then, as was mentioned, in another couple of weeks, I'll be going back into a conjoint role with the University of Queensland and also the Queensland Academy of Sport. So that's the lens that I'm going to take to today's topic. I will tell you that in the early days, back in the 1990s, which is probably way before some of you were born, if you wanted to embrace new and novel technologies as they pertain to your industry, you kind of had to build your own. And so there was a lot of really interesting, innovative technology that was built within the Australian Institute of Sport, and some of that eventually became commercialized. Some of you might be aware of a product known as GymAware that came from Evan Lawton and some of the technicians that had formerly worked at the AIS. Also, Catapult is a company that was born out of a lot of research that came from the Australian Institute of Sport. But today, technology is exploding. There's all kinds of new and novel technologies that may be relevant to your particular needs. And it's not just technology, it's also software. I think that you can kind of lump new sensors and technologies along with some of these really interesting themes that are opening up with AI and large language models. So it's becoming almost a full-time job in some cases to just try to stay aware of what's going on out there and who's capturing technology and putting it to use in unique ways that results in tangible benefits. And that's why we have like a master class such as this one to try to rapidly move through a topic that you may not be reading about a lot, and you just want a bit of an overview to condense a lot of information into a short period of time. So that's what we're going to do today. So let's talk a little bit about youth sport. Why is it so important? I've included a whole number of references, and if I wanted to, I could have dug deeper, and I probably could have come up with even more references. And all of these references consistently talk about this very simple theme, and that is involvement in sport during youth, especially through adolescence, through like those 12, 13 on into 19 years old. They strongly predict higher physical activity, better fitness, and healthier habits in adulthood. And so there's just nothing wrong with that. That's just a wonderful, wonderful statement. And so involvement in sport during youth has many recognized benefits, and those benefits are good for the nation, and they're good for communities, and they're good for the health and well-being of the individuals in those families. So youth sport is worth talking about because it is important. This study came out of Finland, and it just reiterates the fact. The way that you interpret this graph down here is these are odds ratios. So they have an odds ratio of 1. These are for individuals who exercise, they participate in youth sport less than 1 day a week. And then what they do is they look at their participation in lifetime activities that could be physical activities that could be good for health. And what this graph shows is the same thing that we just said, and it's shown many times over, and that is individuals who participate in youth sport many times a week, more than once a week, they end up having a 5-fold higher likelihood of being involved in adult physical activities when they get older. So it sounds like these are not just conceptual themes; these are very real themes. This is basically a study that Merkel published, and they talk about youth sport in the United States. And the good thing they say is there's a lot of children involved in youth sport and adolescent sport as well. Over 45 million youth in the United States of America are involved in some type of organized sport. And 75% of American families with school-age children have at least one child that's participating in sport. The bad thing is that there's also a lot of youth that are not involved in sport or any type of structured activity. And a third of the children in the United States are now classified as being overweight. It's also the case that there are a number of children and teenagers living a very sedentary lifestyle with a lot of screen time and a lot of sitting. And the ugly part about the sport, it's great that they're all moving, but there's a lot of sports in the United States that youth is participating in, especially like soccer and gridiron. And these sports, people are wondering if the youth are appropriately prepared and appropriately coached in these sports, because there are a lot of emergency room visits each year for sport-related injuries. And so this brings up the concept that, one, it would be great if we could get more youth involved in sport, because it looks like the long-term health outcomes are important. But it's important that we don't just skip over a number of children who might feel overweight and not in shape and be very resistant to engaging in some of these sporting activities that are available. And when the youth do get involved in sport, it'd be great to have technology that would allow people working in this area to be safer. Other published studies are recognizing that youth sport participation in Europe, males tend to be a lot more engaged in youth sport than females. So technologies and ways to recruit females is an issue that is of interest. Male and female participation rates increase usually up until about 14 years of age. And then at that stage, 12 to 14, there's usually a rapid reduction in participation rates through adolescence. And that decrease is noticeable and pronounced in female participants. They tend to drop out more than males. So how do we get females involved in sport? And how do we retain the females in sport, as well as come up with schemes and strategies to allow all of the youth to stay involved with sport longer? I tried to look for some Australian data. I did find a study out of Western Australia, and what you can see is the blue arrow going down and the orange arrow going down. They reflect participation rates in consistent in engagers in youth sport. And it recognizes again that from ages of 14 to 17, there's a very noticeable drop off. So one of the questions for us today is, are there any technologies or any techniques or any science that might help mitigate that drop and that reduction, with the thought that it's not just a thing that we should all tolerate, that if we can keep youth involved in sport and sporting activity, it might have long-term benefits, both for those individuals, but also the nation. So here's the question. Is it possible with new science? Is it possible with new technologies? Is it possible with AI to increase participation rates in youth sport, especially in females? And is it possible to decrease dropout rates from youth sport, especially from the ages of 14 to 18? Those are some of the questions. And if you read through the literature, some of the big themes on why people don't sign up or why they drop out after they've signed up is it just costs too much money, or they don't have the transportation to get to the facility, or there are time conflicts, or there's low confidence or perceived ability. And again, we talked about a third of the children in the United States being classified as overweight. It can be difficult to encourage those type of individuals that they should be out there running around on the soccer field with their peers. There might be a very poor social experience. People might make fun of them. They might have a negative past experience where they got hurt and they don't want to get hurt again. It may just be a low priority. They're interested in, school or music or other themes, and exercise is not, and sport is not a priority to them. There may be limited opportunities. They just live in an area where there's just not much available. There could be an overemphasis on competition, and people don't like constantly being reinforced that they're not good enough to be on the team that does compete. And if they do, they tend to lose. Injuries are also a theme that comes up over and over. Lack of role models, not seeing anyone in your family or extended family or friends that are involved in sport or sporting related activities, and that there's just no enjoyment. The coach might be really hard on the kids and have a real performance approach versus an enjoyment and experiential approach. So what can technology do to try to address some of these themes that are holding people out of sport? Well, one type of technology that you might not think about a lot is the technology that goes into unique and novel sporting equipment. So inline skating is interesting because even if there's no ice around, if you can make these inline skates available and you can have skating clinics, you can open up a whole new type of activity that lots of people can participate in as long as they can afford the equipment and they don't even need ice to go out and do this type of an activity. The same holds true for roller skis. You could have a whole cross-country ski team up there in Brisbane, and they could do the majority of their training on these high-tech roller skis. Another thing that's known to really decrease the barrier for entry is these artificial environments. So you can build a very big ice arena, and all of a sudden you can do all kinds of different ice skating events. And if you can decrease the cost, and it's in an area that's quite popular, then a lot of kids can come in and play around with ice sports, the different types of ice sports, because it's just so close. These surf waves are making it way easier. There's no sharks in these parks, so it's relatively safe, and you can create beautiful waves over and over and over. And we're already seeing quite an explosion of these surf ranches and surf wave parks. And young kids can get in there with supervision and start to learn how to surf at a very, very high level very quickly. Rock climbing walls had a profound effect on youth participation in a sport that once was reserved for the real wilderness junkie. And these are some data that show, climbing gyms currently today, at least in North America, are recognized as a $3.3 billion market. And there's this huge increase in youth participation in rock climbing and bouldering, primarily because the accessibility to this sport has really increased dramatically, and it's very safe and it's very social. And so with some novel technologies with synthetic rock and holds, you're able to allow people to experience a sport that normally they wouldn't experience at all. Another thing that's quite interesting, there was a book that came out called Range by David Epstein. I've met him a couple of times. He actually visited the Australian Institute of Sport and featured some of our work in an earlier book that he wrote called The Sports Gene. And so I've talked to him about these ideas of having these multidisciplinary sport parks. And you can imagine for cycling, especially as a child, why not allow them to ride their bicycles and ride their bicycle over the dirt, or ride their bicycle over little safe jumps, or ride their bicycle on the road, or ride their bicycle around a velodrome. And so you don't have to specialize too early for some of the youth. And then what happens is, again, trying to lower the barrier of entry and allow someone not to sign up to say you went to a field sports center. You don't have to pick, am I doing AFL, or am I doing rugby league, or am I doing rugby union, or am I going to do, soccer? It just becomes a field sport playground, and the youth are able to engage sequentially in a whole variety of different field ball related sports. Some technology that I've been involved with over the last year is computer vision technology. And it's just been amazing how rapidly this technology has started to become more and more sophisticated and more usable. There's a company called Foamy. The CEO and founder is an individual I used to work with at the Australian Institute of Sport, Dr. Pete Logan. Kind of traveled the world, worked with another number of countries in technology, including Team USA sailing. And then after COVID, he took one of these ideas that he'd been working with, and he built up a product where you can use your phone and you can capture essentially the biomechanics of movement just from your phone. Other people have done this as well, but the one thing that Pete's done that's really interesting is he was able, I helped chaperone a connection with the Queensland Academy of Sport. And as far as recognizing youth that might have extraordinary movement capabilities, he was able to design an app with this computer vision technology. And so youth could just have their mom or their dad film them. They would go through some different types of physical activities to show how adept they were at certain movement patterns. Those movement patterns could be recorded and scored in a very sophisticated way, and then loaded up into a database and put into a leaderboard. And so what happens is, people might look at this technology just for Olympic sport, but it also has the ability to just do triage on young people who want to know, I wonder what kind of sports in my community are available for me, and I wonder which ones I might be good at. So it could become a sport matching type of an app, as well as a talent identification app. And then instead of going out and to the schools or meeting your son's friend and encouraging him to do the sport that you guys like, you start to have these new and novel abilities to connect to kind of state-of-the-art technologies in social media. And so you can start to launch social media campaign, which the Queensland Academy of Sport has done. And then people can download the app and they can then submit their results. This saves the testing team from having to drive all around Queensland to try to meet athletes face to face. It does like an initial triage. And although they're just looking for talented potential Olympians right now, you can imagine how the next step could easily move towards letting individuals profile themselves and then start to connect to local community sport coaches or club leaders. And they say, look, I'm very tall, I can jump, I can throw a ball very far. No one in my family's ever played volleyball, but it matches me very well in volleyball. And I didn't even know there was a volleyball club in town. I should go say hi, and I could have a lot of fun. And even if I don't become an Olympian, this could be a sport for life for me, something that I really enjoy. And then if you can get, right now, Chris Hemsworth is not involved with this project, but if he was, he has 58 million followers. So you could start to use the new technologies with kind of techniques that social media campaigners are using, and try to tap into driving interest and excitement around the sporting clubs that you're trying to support. The company that I'm working for right now, Appear on Life, we do some profiling, kind of middle-aged individuals, 40, 50, 60s primarily, and we will do some profiling, kind of like what Foamy's doing with their movement analysis. And what we do is we look at what's called health span domains, and then we use these profiles to start to direct lifestyle modifications so people feed their needs. They do the kind of activities that are best for their health. And you could see a future with some of the movement profiling and some more elaborate questionnaires that you could start to take youth and say, not only would you be good at this sport, but these are great lifetime sports for you because they're going to help you. Some individuals have very low bone mineral density. Some have a hard time putting on muscle mass. Other people will wrestle with body composition issues for, a large part of their life. For some people, it's balance and movement quality. And certain sports help those, have the potential to help those specific types of deficits. So you could see some sport matching, not just on what you're good at, but the kind of sports that could stick with you and be useful for you for your entire life from a health and disease prevention perspective. And that may influence dropout rates because you're not just doing, this activity because you're good at it. You're also doing it because you have a family history of heart disease, and this is particularly good for keeping your heart healthy. Another type of technology that we're seeing is this type of combination of technology or video games moving into like a hybrid relationship with actual movement. So Swift is a really good example of this. You can see the cyclist up on his bicycle. That ergometer, he could be in his living room. It's connected to essentially like a video game, and he can pedal a virtual bike around different courses. The Oz Cycling has used this concept, and they've started to roll out some talent ID efforts, but it's also becoming a sport almost in and of itself. And it's a really interesting way, if you have access to the bicycles, to connect with a global population of cycling enthusiasts. No one's going to get hit by a car. You're not going to fall off of your bicycle. It's completely safe. So you can imagine for starting to introduce young people into cycling, this would be a very, very safe way to do it. Okay, so those are some ideas on how technology might influence trying to attract people into the sport or the sporting club that you're working with. The thing I want to do now is talk just a little bit about retention. So let's say they're in, how do you keep them in? Well, one thing that is really interesting to watch is all the gamification and motivational strategies that are starting to be used in the health and wellness industry. Just like you can see, I've got some judo athletes there. They have different colored belts, and those belts have been shown to help retention in the martial arts. So as youth move from their white belts into their yellow belts, into their purple belts, they start to essentially become like addicted, or they feel like there's a sunk cost. I put this much time to get this far. Why would I quit now? And so other sports have tried to do this. I know one youth basketball group in the United States, and they have a series of different colored shirts. And as you progress through different skills, you get awarded these different colored shirts. And so it kind of shows your expertise and skill sets. I have a screenshot there from Aura Ring. They give you crowns. So if you have a particularly good night's sleep, you get a crown. And you can see that Apple has really launched on this idea of streaks, and there's some great behavioral research science behind this, that as people start to build some inertia and they say, wow, I've gone to my weightlifting class 3 times this week, and I've done that for 3 weeks in a row. This is the longest streak I ever had. That can be a motivator for people to be retained within the system. You see things like closure rings, which has become very addictive behavior for a lot of people. With the Apple Watch, it's been around now for decades that they came up with this closure rings, which is, as the day takes off, you can look at your activity, and as that activity accumulates, you close your ring. And these themes are all themes worthy of exploration as you work with clubs and you try to think of how do you keep your club exciting and engaging so that people don't want to quit, or they don't want to quit. They love the environment that they are in. Some individuals are amazing leaders and their group never wants to leave them, but it's also fun to explore the different technologies and kind of behavioral science approaches that are being used to try to drive retention. Another area that I found super interesting is social contagions. Social behaviors can be contagious. There are this idea of kind of birds of a feather flock together. If you're around a lot of people and they like to have, you know, pizza certain nights a week, and they tend to always over order, and it's kind of like a bit of a gorge fest, and everyone around is doing it. The pizza tastes good, and everybody else is doing it, so why not? And over time, what can happen is that can result in an unhealthy weight gain. And so there's this really interesting, line of research looking at these social contagions, which are defined as behaviors and attitudes and emotions that spread through social networks. They can play a significant role whether young people continue participating in sports or not. If you have like a bad culture, a bad vibe, or people don't like the coach and they don't like showing up and they think it's overly dictated what they can do and what they can't do, then individuals that are really turned off, their attitudes and behaviors can start to actually act like a contagion and start to influence others in that group as well. And you'll see entire peer groups drop out of a sport at the same time. So the understanding is the first thing. How you use it is the second thing. Is there a way to gauge where are all the different individuals with their attitudes and their beliefs and their connection to the sporting club that they're part of? And one thing that's really great for social contagions is to allow individuals to take on leadership roles. And leaders tend to exude, when given new opportunities to lead, a level of confidence and commitment that can influence individuals who are possibly on the fence and can be a little bit negative. Okay, now let's switch to artificial intelligence. This is a really fun area. So I'm in the Bay Area right now, so right in the heart of Silicon Valley, and we are surrounded by companies and groups that are consulting with and developing and growing different types of artificial intelligence and working with large language models. Artificial intelligence is transforming the field of sports science by providing unprecedented insights and tools that enhance training, performance, and health management. And one question that we all need to ask is, when it comes to youth sport, where is AI going to really take hold first? And where is AI going to be truly transformative? The message that I hear all the time is, people always go, is AI going to take my job? Is it going to take me as a coach or an administrator? Is it going to take my job? And I've heard over and over that AI is not going to really directly take anyone's job, but somebody who's a coach that knows how to use AI will outcompete a coach that doesn't know how to use AI. An administrator or a program leader that knows how to use AI will outcompete an individual that's not using AI when used most effectively. So let me start with one of the areas I think is super interesting and could have profound effects leading into the future. So this is one of many companies. This one's called Querlo. I have no financial affiliation with this company at all, but I have done a couple projects with Francesco, who is the CEO and leader of Querlo, and he's got a bunch of really interesting, sophisticated models. They're very, very flexible, and he works on building up digital twins. And you might say, well, why would I want a digital twin? I've heard of this before, but why do I need a digital twin? And the idea behind the digital twin is that they can take over a lot of the mundane tasks that may need to be done, especially with correspondence. If you're running a big club and you've got like over 70, 80 people in it, a very charismatic leader only has limited time. But if they build up a digital twin, they can handle and do triage on a lot of the conversations and questions certain people have. And they can even get the timing set up so the digital twin can reach out, not as an imposter. It would say, like, I'm Bob's digital twin. I haven't heard from you over the last couple of days. You haven't been at our practices. And I just wanted to check in and see how you're going. You can either talk to me, I can give you a lot of information, or if you want, I'll hook you up with a meeting with the real Bob, so that you can talk to him, because we really value your presence in our practices, and we want to make sure that everything's going well for you. And if you're a really busy person, those people will just slip through the cracks. I ended up asking this digital twin, I said, look, I want to talk to you about creating a chatbot for an adult fitness class. So I'm running an adult fitness class. I have like hundreds of people coming into my fitness class. I'm doing it all on my own. A lot of people don't come as often as I would hope. They're very intermittent. I'd like them to come more consistently. So I asked the chatbot, I said, can you help me understand whether Querlo could help me build up a chatbot that would like mimic me and help me with my adult fitness class? And the chatbot gets right back to me. This is the Querlo administrative chatbot. And she says, yes, I can help you with appointment scheduling and reminders. I can help you with customer engagement. I can help you collect feedback after each class. I can write them a little note and say, hey, just checking in. I wanted to get some feedback on today's session. I can send out weekly some health and fitness tips curated by you. I can be highly customizable to reflect your tone and your spirit. We can choose color themes together, even include motivational videos to send out. And I will be available 24/7. And some of these are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to put together. So I think this is a really exciting area and could have big effects, especially when you have communities where there's one charismatic leader and everybody wants their time, and you wish you could have six of them, and you just don't. So then this is a company, and this company here is called Sphexa, Silicon Valley Exercise Analytics. It's another AI company. They're like an intelligence layer. Sphexa is a startup company that's come out of Stanford. It's the health and performance intelligence layer that's used by a lot of different organizations. They help develop the algorithms that are used in the Apple Watch for detecting if you're having a heart arrhythmia or not. So that's kind of the place that they look in. They are using proprietary AI, combining cutting edge science with the latest tech to deliver individualized, adaptive, and actionable recommendations for pretty much any person in any situation. So I'll tell you, this is some of the modules that they've built up. And with some of the clients we work with here at Appear on Life, we've worked with Sphexa to help come up with resistance training programs or running programs for, say, some Silicon Valley executive, and he wants to run the Chicago Marathon. So that takes a lot of time putting those plans together. So we let the AI take the first pass. We feed it with a bunch of information, and then the AI, it takes a look at all of the Garmin data coming from their watch, and it has some algorithms. And what it does is it tries to produce adaptive coaching with human surveillance, and it saves a lot of time. So they have a module called Alida, and Alida does endurance training plans, including running plans. They have Thread, which specifically is designed to lock and load with different companies and groups who have to produce, like, say 200 resistance training programs for youth. That can take a long time. But with Thread, you can turn this over pretty quickly once you set it up. And the other thing is they have these satyrs, which is kind of like a personality. So they'll take a very famous coach, they'll work with that coach, they'll learn their style, their tone, and their personality, and then they use that to overlay with the training program for delivery. So some people like a real hard ass, like boot camp type of a coach, like get off your butt and don't be lazy and let's go. Where other people like, hey, I understand you got a busy life, and I'm with you, and missing the day is not that big of a deal, but let's get back on top of it. So you can pick the tone. Anyway, I think these areas are really quite interesting. We've also explored different types of engagement. They're almost like robots, but they're kind of like an advanced Siri, where it's a lot of information loaded up into a portal that you can talk to. And so one is called LEQ, and this is something that right now is being marketed for aged care. But you could see for sporting groups in a clubhouse, having a portal where people can have a theme and then talk about that theme, like nutrition or recovery. It might be something set up in a recovery area, and people can come in and go, hey, Ellie, this is my name, and I want to know what I should do today. I don't have a lot of time. I'm really sore in my muscles. I got a couple options. It says I definitely do the cold hydrotherapy today. That would be the number one thing that you could do. Um, this one's really fun. I mean, Google is unbelievable with the kind of things that they are making. And they launched this LLM-based conversational diagnostic research AI system. And if they can do this in medicine, just think what you could do for queries and questions coming from parents from their child. And a lot of times the parents have really, really intense questions, and they're really committed, and they just want to talk and talk and talk about stuff. So what Google did is they introduced Amy, and it's basically a conversational bot, but it's set up for like diagnostic purposes. So what it does is you say, "Hey, Amy, I've been feeling off, and my ear hurts, and I don't know what's going on, and I need some help." And so what it does, it's like agentic AI. So it's going to start asking you questions and pulling in more information. And they're showing within about 3 iterations that the diagnosis and the manner with which individuals are being spoken to is perceived as very empathetic, very kind, and very knowledgeable. And so I think this is an area that we all need to think of. Training these models is tricky. That takes a lot of work and a lot of in-house proprietary knowledge. But the machinery of these tools is phenomenal. All right, so hopefully I got you a little bit interested in all the new and novel things coming our way. But now we're going to end, and I'm going to leave you with a couple cautionary notes. So whenever I talk about new and novel technologies in sports science, I use this slide, and I think it's appropriate for new and novel technologies as it pertains to youth sport. And the idea is that technology can be a sword or it can be a shield. A sword is like a new tool. It allows the warrior to move forward faster or stronger or in a more powerful way than they normally could if they didn't have the sword. They know where they want to get, they know the battles they want to fight, and the sword helps them get there quicker. The shield, on the other hand, is something you hide behind when you're under attack. And I find this a lot in elite sport and in many organizations, that they'll hire or buy very sophisticated software or very sophisticated technology. But when you ask them, what are you doing with that technology and how is that making all of our lives better, people don't have a good answer. And they tend to say, we need more training courses and we need to get more oriented to it. And it's going to take time before the data is going to be helpful. And there's always like an excuse, but over time, you have this little group that's working on this fancy software or with this new monitoring technology, but you're kind of like, I think we were better before that technology ever got here. And technology isn't always perfect. And there's one story that I like to talk about, and it's fetal heart rate monitoring, because fetal heart rate monitoring was incredible technology, and they're able to monitor the heart rate of the unborn baby. And the idea was this was going to be unbelievable. This was going to make the whole process of giving birth to a child safer. But what happened in the 1970s when this fetal heart rate monitoring technology was introduced, nobody had ever really measured the heart rate of babies en masse. And not, people, midwives and doctors, they didn't totally know what to do with the data. And the people that really understand how to support a woman when she's about to have a baby are the midwives. But this new technology displaced them. And they talk about this being over medicalized with the natural childbirthing process. And so the people that really connected with the women, they were excluded or pushed back. And all these kind of tech type people came in to monitor the whole process of labor and giving birth to a child. And what you can see in this graph is over essentially 36 years, the percentage of C-sections in this area that were monitored in the US They went from about 1 in 20 women having a C-section all the way up to about 1 in 3 women having a C-section. And there are some commentary that this technology has taken more than 40 years for the entire industry to recover from. So just be very careful. It's great to be exploratory. It's great to have fun. Youth sport isn't like taking care of a woman having a baby, but you got to always be careful that you don't take, a big step backwards. It's risky business. I was involved with a group and we wrote a paper. I put the reference down here. Wint was the first author, and we talked about to tech or not to tech. And we were talking to professional sporting, kind of that was our audience, Olympic sport and professional sport. And we kind of went through a series of questions to just really say, look, there's some really fun technology around you, but do you really want to embrace it and start to operationalize it and use it? Because sometimes if you go through a series of questions, you're like, that looks really cool, but I don't think I want to use it yet. All right, the last little bit. I just wanted to let you know that this is kind of a summary slide. As stated by Merkel in this 2013 review paper, it appears that all in all, an emphasis on fun while establishing a balance between physical fitness, psychological well-being, and lifelong lessons for a healthy and active lifestyle are paramount for successful youth sport. And I think some of these themes are very intuitively appealing. And the hypothesis that we've been kind of toying with or playing with today is, can new and novel technologies and approaches help make this happen? So in summary, youth sport participation is not ideal. It looks like it's important and it can improve. Technology can be a tool for recruitment, and we covered a couple different ways that might happen. That could be sporting technology, as well as venues that allow easier access for people to be part of a sport. We also talked about these hybrid scenarios where you start to let video games and activity kind of blend together. So high-tech equipment and venues can have impact. Sport retention is a science. There's reasons why people drop out. If you understand those reasons, you can start to embrace new and novel technologies to see if they can help you. And I really like those digital twin themes. I think are really interesting, and also ways to try to monitor kind of the culture of the club that you're working with. It shouldn't be an obligation. It should be a fun, engaging thing that you look forward to, obviously. AI co-pilots can guide, support, and scale coaches. So we're not trying to replace coaches. We're trying to give the coaches and the club leaders tools that allow them to have more impact across more individuals. Exergaming has arrived and it will likely expand. We know that esport is exploding. We know that the gaming industry is making more money than Hollywood right now. So these people are the masters of getting people to try things out and to stick with it. They are learning how to create addictions that drive people to thoroughly enjoy and want to stay with these video games that they're playing. Implementing new technology can be risky. So I gave you a little cautionary note there. I'm saying let's explore and see what kind of fun things are out there to try out. And I do think that new technology represents a lot of potential, and it's a super, super exciting time to be alive. I put in a picture here of Gout, who's just a phenom as a 100-meter sprinter. And he is pictured here with his coach, Di Shepard. And Di recognized his talent year 7 at Ipswich Grammar. And I use that as a picture just to remind all of us that although we're talking about amazing technologies, the part of sport and the part of clubs and the part of youth sport that we all love are these human interactions. So we always want to make sure that the technology augments that and opens up more opportunities for the really good stuff. Okay. So this quote here, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. One thing that I've always loved about Australia, and one of the reasons that I'm coming back, the Olympics are coming to Brisbane. And I was in Australia when the Olympics came to Sydney. And the part I love about Australia is just how innovative and clever and creative Australians are at trying to not just recognize new and novel technologies, but really bring a pragmatic approach to those technologies and look at how to implement them for an advantage. And I think sometimes in the US, they've got all this talent and they get a bit lazy, and there's just so many people. Someone's going to win that 4x100 relay. But in Australia, people really think about, what if we gave that a go? What if we tried this? And I think that's a really unique perspective, and it's one that I really enjoy. So thank you very much for your time.